For a few years now, online spaces have engaged in a practice we've come to call call-out/cancel culture. This term has been tossed around a lot recently as online communities attempt to police themselves. Even some of the largest left tubers have decided to give their 2 cents on the issue. In recent times, the reaction to this phenomenon has sharpened conflicts within the community, and we have decided to analyze the problem and come up with a solution. Please don't cancel us if it's a bad idea. This is for anyone in the LeftTube space, both the content creators and their audiences. We hope that any criticisms we offer here can help viewers better understand this issue, as well as give solutions to the online left. But what is it? We can start by understanding what a callout is and what canceling is. A callout or callout post is simply a post that typically names an individual, forms a list of grievances against them, and provides proof to whatever extent possible of said grievances. Basically, it's spilling the tea and posting receipts. Canceling is the general next step once the callout does not affect the desired change in the individual. It is an implicit or explicit call for the ostracization of the named individual. With this in mind, it becomes fairly obvious what callout/cancel culture is. It is when callout posts and cancellation efforts become commonplace within social spaces as a form of self-policing. The main problem with callouts and cancellation is that it isn't the most effective way of addressing grievances within a community. At its core, calling out is a way to criticize someone. The cancellation is when the criticism doesn't affect change. As we can see, callouts don't usually make people change, and cancellations don't usually remove people from the community. In the rare cases that they do, it is mostly marginalized people who get ostracized. This can spiral out of control and become harassment mobs. Because there is no organized way to do callouts, any individual can do them for any reason. The follow-up question is, why would these methods become commonplace? Well, unfortunately, there's no other way of doing it. Leftists don't own Twitter, nor do we own any other platform really. And it's not exactly a secret that mods don't like us or listen to us. Being unable to rely on a third party to resolve disputes and address grievances, the users take it upon themselves to effect a kind of unofficial moderation. However, the targets of callouts are typically those with significant social capital in leftist spaces, and those doing the callout don't have a way to directly address their subject. The person doing the callout must then game social media to push back against their subject's clout, and the disagreement devolves into a popularity contest. Boiling it down to who can spend more social capital isn't really a good way of doing critique. And therein lies another huge problem within callouts and canceling. It is inherently individualist. Rather than addressing the systemic problems in place that allows for people to commit offenses and often get away with it, the callout only addresses the individual and their problems. Obviously, we want to remove sexual harassers from the community. However, callout culture is treating the symptoms and not the causes. As long as we allow for bad people to use their social capital to defend themselves, they will always be able to game social media to make themselves immune to criticism. Speaking of people who are immune to criticism, please don't turn off the video. LeftTube has noticed the individualistic and ineffective nature of callout culture, but in response to it, they have become overly defensive, presuming that all people who engage in callout culture are doing so in bad faith. This has in turn created a culture of hyper-protectiveness where LeftTube and individual LeftTubers fear challenges to their livelihood. In essence, LeftTube has become anti-critique, as any criticisms represent a threat to their jobs. In Peter Coffin's very important documentary, Our Lady of Perpetual Correctness, they lay out how content creators, thought leaders, etc., due to the nature of their jobs, need to create the air of always being right, or being perpetually correct. These people are selling the idea that they are correct, and to maximize the effectiveness of that sale, they need to give off the appearance that they always have the right idea. Eagle-eyed, or maybe eagle-eared listeners will have noticed the emphasis on sales. We can see as left-tubers become more reliant on this sale, on this production as a way to stay alive, they become more and more petty bourgeois. This anti-critical strain forms. When being correct is your job, criticism becomes more dangerous, even to the point where self-criticism and introspection become a threat. In essence, the economic interests of the content creators provide an incentive not to engage with criticism openly. It is understandable when one's livelihood is at stake to avoid engaging with potentially damaging situations. However, avoiding criticism or downplaying accusations does not eliminate the problem, it only suppresses it. When you disregard or sarcastically dismiss someone's concern, you create enemies. In turn, you also cultivate a following that simply passively consumes your content. This defensive behavior is again a natural impulse when the purpose behind the content is to make a living.
And we are not making a lot of money. And this does create, I don't know, I guess a kind of a, just to be frank and honest, it forces us to be a little bit protective about what we have secured for ourselves.
However, there are instances when content creators do address criticisms and comments directly, yet this is still always done in the most controlled way possible, and accepting fault for mistakes is shockingly rare. While a poor response is often better than no response at all, at least you acknowledge the existence of the issue, you cannot be held fully accountable if you are in relative control of the space. As we have already said, when your audiences feel like their critiques can't or won't be heard, the result will be callouts, this public antagonism. And all this could be prevented with proper measures in place to address criticism and respond appropriately. Now, I know this seems a bit harsh, but we aren't trying to single any individual out. We aren't trying to call anyone out. We have just noticed a systemic problem that has been forming on LeftTube, and now we want to address it. When we say you are acting in your own self-interest, we are not saying you are a bad person. When we say you are petty bourgeois, we are not saying that you are a bad person. If we hadn't realized we were transitioning into the petty bourgeois, we would have done the same thing. We are talking about how the class interests of LeftTube are affecting its ability to properly spread socialism, and how, if left unchecked, these conditions will bring about the end of LeftTube. The end is nigh, get out your cardboard signs, and prepare for the death of LeftTube if we don't correct how our community handles criticisms. So we've seen this type of thing before when leaders of a community stopped engaging with criticism about themselves and died in obscurity. Anybody remember the Skeptics? Back around 2012, they were the most popular force on political YouTube. Feminist Frequency's Kickstarter had fueled any white boy with an internet connection who was ready to tear Anita Sarkeesian down a peg, and then carried that hatred into their zenith with Gamergate in the spring of 2015. Then LeftTube happened. LeftTube, a critical response to skeptic YouTube, made response videos to them, and instead of engaging with this criticism, the skeptics stayed their course. And as we know from dialectics, change must happen. Skeptic YouTube tried to suppress the dialectics, and in doing so they made the only possible outcome their replacement by a different YouTube movement. And if we as LeftTube don't learn from our predecessors' mistakes, we'll be replaced by a new YouTube movement as well. But instead of a further left-wing movement, we will be replaced by the burgeoning FashTube we see all around ourselves. They will have a much easier time replacing us than a new LeftTube when we inevitably crumble. Callouts are insufficient for corrective action, and that the current relationship between users and their audience, platforms and their content creators, does not provide a system for addressing grievances. There needs to be a way to intervene when genuinely harmful people find themselves in positions of power, either to stop their actions or to remove them from the space/end association with them. With all this in mind, it is necessary to create a system within leftist new media if we want it to continue to exist, much less grow into a genuine force to be reckoned with. Note that the suggestion here is not to systemize some forms of mass parasocial relationship. We are not saying that we want content creators to be completely at the whim of every demand from the viewers. Instead, all of LeftTube needs to come together under the umbrella of a union of content creators. We must have this centralized and cooperative system in order to facilitate communication and address concerns between the community and the creators. This includes, but is not limited to, accusations of abuse or association with abusive people, criticism of reactionary views, and critical oversights in video/essay content. For instance, if a sexual abuser were to make a video in collaboration with a creator, this organization would be employed to ensure that corrective action is taken. A public statement is made detailing the incident in response, and the incident is not repeated. This organization would then be able to communicate with all creators it represents so that the abusive individual in question is not picked up in the future, preventing the incident from repeating with a new creator who may be unaware of their previous offenses. In addition, it must compile and synthesize the varied feedback on the work of the creators it represents. Minor corrections, relevant but omitted viewpoints, and even simple suggestions can be compiled rather than having to sift through mountains of comments, many of which would either be trivial or repeat information. This union would have benefits beyond simply resolving the call-out contradiction. For one, it could provide services such as vetting to prevent instances much like the abusive associate in the prior example. It could perform outreach such as gathering viewpoints for video material, especially for videos relevant to a particular demographic. It could effectively organize a distribution of money to help smaller LeftTube channels. It can ensure that marginal viewpoints are given a platform by ensuring that marginalized non-creators have a channel to communicate with creators, or by promoting the work of marginalized LeftTubers on their behalf. It can even help set up collaborative work between LeftTubers if projects between creators overlap and they feel that collaboration would be beneficial. Such an organization would not be a business, and should not be thought of as one. It is not there to run the channels of these creators. That work still belongs to them. Its purpose is to help organize the, as of now, loosely connected LeftTube creators into a more cohesive force that can act as a genuinely effective presence for leftist education on YouTube. Ideally, the organization exists in communication both with the LeftTube audience and the creators, but is not fully beholden to one over the other. Additionally, relating to some previous points, the organization should have a diverse as possible membership. By promoting the leadership of the most politically educated, especially from the marginalized, such an organization can mediate between the audience and creators, as well as facilitate the production of more accurate and comprehensive works. LeftTube is well out of its juvenile stage. Its early years showed a great public interest in leftist education. It proved the new media potential for leftist education. However, it has grown to a point where it cannot simply remain the loose collective anymore. Not only is the popularity bringing more attention, which means more critical eyes, but the platforms we use are under siege by reactionaries trying to drive us off them. If LeftTube wants to be the serious presence it is often claimed to be, the time is now to demonstrate that and take the step beyond individual creators. A unified party. As said before, this criticism is offered out of respect. It is not meant to belittle YouTube's work, nor be an aggressive accusation of wrongdoing. There has been good work done by these various channels, and not just the big ones. They educate on topics people are unfamiliar with. They have a grasp on the value of aesthetics and presentation, certainly more than reactionary creators. They can marry serious topics with entertainment and do justice to both aspects. We would see preserved and hopefully to grow into an active force. The framework can be built today. Our advice is that it gets started before the opportunity passes. We'll be doing a response video to criticism in the future once people have had time to mull the video over and make some comments. Please take a moment to consider the video and leave a comment if you have a criticism to make. Soon we should have made a better way to collect your critical responses than the comment section. We are sorry this one did not come out in a timely fashion. The original planned voice of this video was without a home and internet for the last week of July, and many other members were without a home or job. Again, we are very sorry, and this month's video should be out on time. For now, follow us on Twitter at ACTSoviet, donate to our Patreon at patreon.com/ACTSoviet, links will be in the description. Thank you for watching. Now you can ratio us.